I just clicked it.
Tap into faith, encourage yourself and run this race. Encourage yourself in the blood of Jesus. Encourage yourself down in His word. Just encourage yourself in the blood of Jesus. Encourage yourself down in His word. We walk by faith and not by sight, for you cannot see all the things God is doing right now. Encourage yourself, don't you see? So encourage yourself in the blood of Jesus. Encourage yourself down in His word. Just encourage yourself in the blood of Jesus. Encourage yourself down in His word. Don't run to the pastor, encourage yourself. Don't run to the brother, encourage yourself. Don't you run to the brothers and sisters, encourage yourself. Run to the awesome word of God. People have their own problems, encourage yourself. They have their own situation, so encourage yourself. And then you will know God is God. Then you will know He's a Prince of Peace. And then you will know He's a comforter. And then you will know He's a light in the middle of the wheel.
You'll know.
He's always beside
All right.
you.
Ooh, we are late. It is 1 o'clock. Get everything set up. And we're going to get right into our read because we'll be finishing this very, very instrumental book in the knowledge of my people as a race of people. Praise God. Oh gosh. Okay, Lord. Not now. Wait later. Wait later. And you could not see your way. Read book. Encourage yourself. Surgery for the soul. No. We're not surgery for the soul. That was the morning's read. Ew. Breaking. Say, Ro, can you type something in the comment to see if it's on? Because I don't see you on here. Have you said anything yet? Read book. Breaking. For you cannot see. Breaking the curse of Stevie Lynch. Encourage yourself. All right, that's good enough. That's good enough. Okay, I see you. Yay. Praise God. Oh, okay, I see you. Brother Snipes, my son, Brother Snipes. You're in the little thing today. Oh, you're on Periscope. You're on Periscope. Oh, my. That is exciting. Your Periscope, I can see you. I can see my husband on YouTube. But on Facebook, it doesn't do it. Okay, I'm Live Me is coming in. The people on Live Me are coming in. Y'all got to hurry up and come in Live Me because I'm getting ready to start reading every day. I don't have time to play because I'll be reading all day. 30 to 40 minute segment on this powerful read for us people of color so we can learn why we are the way we are. So it's 1 o'clock. I've already prayed early up in the day at the beginning, so we are ready to go. We are ready to jump right into the read. I left off yesterday on Willie's Fear, chapter 7. Willie's Fear, the phenomenon of true history. Okay, come on in, everybody. I see you, Luna Lilo. I see you over there, Chase. We're live in the main platform, Chase. We over here on Facebook Live also. All right, here we go. We're on page 51, chapter 7. Willie's Fear, the phenomenon of true history. Let me get my lovely hand highlighter while I'm reading. For the slave master to justify an act of mental genocide, they realized then and now that the first casualty of war must be the truth. So this is what is referred to as shaving off the brute, shaving off the brute's mental history. The phenomena that Mr. Lynch and other slave masters feared was the so-called nigger savage's psychological reaction upon the moment of receiving a true historical revelation about themselves. This fear represents to the slave master a loss of control, major lifestyle adjustments, and the actual loss of an entire civilization that was based on superficial speculations that gave them the mental edge over the societies that make up the human population. And this is what's happened today. Over the last century, we have witnessed the fear manifested in the Eurocentric man's aggression to be the center of power through dishonest media acts of economic sanctions and acts of physical violence on people of color. What do the so-called most powerful people on the earth fear? And have they become enslaved to the guilt produced by their lies, mistreatment, and control tactics that were used in making the African mental slave? Since we are dissecting the powerful nature of truth, let us understand that truth is a two-edged sword that cuts the presented as well as the presenter. Therefore, in breaking the curse of Willie Lynch, two sprees of thinking that allow this mind to exist must both face the reality of truth. Covering the spree of mind possessed by the black man and black woman of North America, there is the tremendous task of analyzing the damaged psyche that under normal circumstances would be supported by people's mental history. Now, after centuries of physical bondage, black people in America were left with a voided mental history as a basis to start the process of healing. In attempting to educate the black man and woman of North America, the Eurocentric educators, in most instances, have deliberately calculated a fragment of the American history that covered our experience in this country and defined those selected events as a basis of self-knowledge for black students. The educational curriculum that is being used in the United States does not cater to the basic needs of black students in the area of reform from slavery's psychological damage. This is more noticeable in the area of unified people development. Unified people development is a concept used in the educational systems throughout the more independent nations, even though the concept may be worded differently. This concept can be defined as a system of teaching the students of a particular people to learn and apply their teacher's instructions for the betterment of their own people first, as long as they do not harm other groups of people in the progressive process. Now, on the other side is the fear in the psyche of many Euro-ethnic students who have been fed a plate of lies about their black student peers, as well as about their own history in the world. Not only the area of human accomplishments, but the area of civil, social treatment of human beings other than themselves. This fear of truth levels the playing field in the mind of black and white students, though benefiting the totally misinformed black student greatly, but not to the extent of black children educated and taught in a social environment owned and operated by a staff specializing in black child development. Since husband, you got to turn that off over there because I can hear it. Yes.
Babe, I got a slight emergency. The key fob.
What about it?
Willie ain't got the keys.
Yeah. How'd he go? How'd he drive it?
Yeah, I started it.
Okay, so how are you going to do it? What you doing?
Can you use your phone? Remember we had set it up?
Oh, God. Praise God. Since we as Black people have a specific and unusual set of issues at hand, let us focus more on our half of breaking the curse of Willie Lynch's effects on the Black mind. As seen by Black scholars, historians, and educators, we soon became able to gauge the level of our damage not only by our lack of unity, reform, and productivity, but also based on the fearful response to Black people's possible unity and self-empowerment by those who had enslaved African people. Now, fear is defined as a psychologically emotional reaction to the threat of pain, harm, and loss of what is deemed as mentally or physically essential to a healthy life. Let me read that again. Fear is defined as a psychologically emotional reaction to the threat of pain, harm, and loss of what is deemed as mentally or physically essential to a healthy life. In a more modern explanation of the definition of fear, is the undermining of common comfort by an outside power or influence. So these are the thoughts harbored by those privileged whites in the higher social status and circles of social economic wealth that understand the true nature of the Black man and the Black woman. Due to generations of mistreatment of the descendants of the Black once physical slaves, the new crop of Euro ethnic leadership could, for a while, enjoy a measure of comfort. Only up until the day that the Black man and Black woman began to make contact and connection with a substantial and reasonably accurate historical foundation. Now, today, this book was written 13 years ago, y'all. This book was written 13 years ago, so let's keep that in mind. Today, this body of knowledge is labeled by Black people living in America as resurrection material. We find stuff out. Information of this nature is essential to giving people sight who were once blinded by the deceit of their oppressors' conditioning, school system, and media. Fear tactics of Willie Lynch and those who studied and implemented his method of control were based on a deeply embedded internal fear for their life. Their abuse of their human property caused within their own psyche layers of unstable security, which when internal response created an even greater emotional need within themselves to put more fear on their already destroyed human property, us. It was during those moments in history that the American who was being made a slave suffered another level of psychic terror never suffered before or after on long-term scale recorded in human existence. As a reminder of who has occupied to the Black family in general, as a reminder of what has occurred to the Black family in general, we must express the level of psychological murder in the most minute detail as possibly provided by the English language. Even though, God bless you, Missy, you made it back. Even though words don't always qualify to equate the terror, we can come close by teaching what we know of true history. These are a couple of excerpts from the historical slave-making document. So we're getting ready to read some more from the Willie Lynch letters. For example, he says, take the case of a wild stud horse, a female horse, and an already infant horse, and compare the breaking process with two captured nigger males in their natural state. A pregnant nigger woman with her infant of offspring. Take the stud horse, break him for limited containment. Completely break the female horse until she becomes very gentle, whereas you have the desired offspring. Then you can turn to the stud to freedom until you need him again. Train the female horse, whereby she will eat out of your hand, and she will in turn train the infant horse to eat out of your hand, comparing us to horses. So when it comes to breaking the uncivilized nigger, use the same process. but vary the degree, and step up the pressure so as to sow a complete reversal of the mind. Take the meanest and most restless nigger, strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male niggers, the female, and the nigger infant. Tar and feather him, tie each leg to a different horse. Oh my God. Let me breathe. Tie each leg to a different horse in opposite directions. Set him afire and beat both horses to pull him apart in front of the remaining niggers. The next step is to take a bullwhip and beat the remaining nigger male to the point of death in front of the female and infant. Don't kill him, but put the fear of God in him, for he can be useful for future breeding. How they gonna be useful for future breeding? You done pull the man apart. Beat the horses, pull them apart, and oh Lord, Jesus, do what they did to my peoples. I didn't know all this. This is hurtful. This hurt my feelings today. Don't it hurt y'all's? That this was done to some peoples, to my foreparents. Okay, let me keep reading. Okay, my husband's having challenges. We let somebody use our vehicle, but my husband kept the key here. We had no fobs, so the car was running. Romy, you need me? Okay. While enjoyment. Okay. Author's comment. So now the author's comment. The second and most popular Euro ethnic expression of fears. Okay, hold on. I'll be right back. Oh, gosh. All right. I needed a break anyway. Just reading something else. Pulling horses and pulling people apart. Lord Jesus. The second and most popular Euro ethnic expression of their fears was to castrate the penis and nurture the testicles of the black male in the very eyes of his offspring and the black woman. You sure you want me to read this, Lord? Because it's hard for me to read. This is hard for me to read. Gay now, gay now, gay now. This is hard for me to read, girl, what this book is saying. Lord Jesus. Okay, let me save myself. I'll just read that part. Gay now just came in. Author's comment. The second and most popular Euro ethnic expression of their fears, talking about the white man's fear of the black man and what he did to him, was to castrate the penis and nurture the testicles of the black male in the very eyes of his offspring and the black woman. After he had been used as a breeding stud. Now, earlier we discussed the historical pattern of the reversal of the roles of gender in the chapter called Fixing Marriages and Breaking Old Social Cycles. In breaking any cycle, one must locate the center point in which a cycle revolves. In the case of the black family, it's been around one, the conditional mental loyalty to sacrifice black life in the form of spirit, labor, love, and self-rejection for the sole benefit of pleasing the man who made us call him master. Praise God. Praise God, Felicia. I'm glad you're enjoying. So only through a refreshing review of our mental history can this aspect of our database be rebuilt to the level that it can serve the black mind in rehabilitating its own faculties to the point where the individual unites with their higher self. The higher self represents the God element in the human being, oftentimes classified as the subconscious or the superego. A plane where supreme guidance replaces general reasoning, will allow the black man and black woman to break free from 446 years of hell and rise to the top overnight. Uh-oh. Look like God talking here. Look like that's what's going on in America today. A plane, P-L-A-N-E. This is an airplane, what they got here. It says P-L-A-N-E. A plane where supreme guidance replaces general reasoning will allow the black man and woman to break free from 446 years of hell and rise to the top overnight. All right, chapter 8. Black family success during the segregation era. Let us review the history of early post-slavery and the surrounding conditions in comparison with the segregation era leading up to the time of desegregation. In between then and now, something more unusual occurred within the framework of the black family structure and community as a whole. In this section, our aim is to pinpoint legislation tied to Euro-centered social policies that have been used to support methods like Willie Lynch's mind-controlling doctrine, aiding in the process of making slaves. In my studies, I ran across a very interesting writing about a unique town entirely populated and governed by black people. For this aspect of the subject matter, you will be asked to locate a book called Kinloch, Missouri's First Black City, written and documented by John A. Wright Sr., which is part of the Black America series. This book was not picked as a reference point because it is my place of birth, but because of the unique social attitude of the state of Missouri, which happened to be the last state to set free their slaves. Now, I have found Mr. John Wright's book to be one of profound proof through example captured on pages as the perfect point of reference for this section in Breaking the Curse of Willie Lynch. In review, we will discuss the different shifts in the attitude of Black America over the many different shifts in the social climate of the country. Since Black unity is a social matter and the events produced by racism are social, we want to carefully observe the economic repercussions brought about by the era of integration and post-segregation. Notice how the multifaceted progression and regression of Black people in North America. Now, for the sole purpose of provoking thought, I will ask you, the reader, you, the hearer, a couple of questions in order to allow you to construct your own personal foundation as a basis for breaking the curse of Lynch and Company. So during the time in which we presently exist in America, did Black people gain more power and control over their destiny during the era of integration than during the era of segregation? Yes or no? You answer that yourself. What are the moral and economic downfalls in the Black communities in this country as a result of so-called desegregation based on the theoretical, Theoretical. That's a new word for me. Based on the theoretical. I think that's what that is. Theoretical. Based on the theoretical promise of social equality with white society. Okay, come on, gay man, I see you. So how does the moral and economic condition of Black men and women today compare to the community actions and Black moral social climate during the era of segregation? So from the time when the abolition of physical slavery took place up to the time of the civil rights movement, there seems to have been a backward shift in community consciousness in the mind state of Black America. Now, before the social desegregation of Black and white America, Black people had taken up the responsibility of developing our own educational systems. Even though Blacks were segregated, we did not put social equality in front of Black life quality. Quality education meant that Blacks in their own school system would demand proper curriculum materials, even though they were under the influence of white scholarship. The 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, were supplied to inquiring young minds in our community. Now, due to the hundreds of years of anti-self social conditioning, combined with modern Eurocentric influence, education reform among Black youth requires a much deeper penetration of the psychological realm in order to pierce the veil of falsified social barriers forged by policy and education under the mask of social integration. What we need as a people is inner Black social integration, which is the infusion of all the different divisions, organizations, political and religious persuasions into one clear, constructive conglomerate. This concept of organizing seems to be very effective during the segregation era when Black people had been totally shut out from white races, shut out from white racist America. The leadership in the Black community possessed some measure of personal power simply due to the harsh nature of the social circumstances. That time period provided no alternative to self-reliance. In contrast to the social incorporating of Blacks into America's mainstream, the segregation era provided a certain amount of force necessary to stimulate and uproot much of the superficial divisions listed in the documented letter of Lynch, because the level of pain produced by the high level of oppression during that era in history. So the circumstances of those times forcing Black people to work in a constructive manner in order to meet the basic requirements of everyday survival. Ordering the implanted psychological divisions based on the training implemented by the slave master that used Willie Lynch slave making sociology. Now, by being freed physically and allowed to think and function away from the plantation, Black men and Black women discovered several key loopholes in past slave social conditioning. One was that the division were not as important as survival of the collective. In early post-slavery, we were recognized, even according to Euro-Gentile standards, as being a separate, independent people. Secondly, Blacks were in between a rock and a hard place because we were forced to choose to wrangle over old white imposed social standards of value such as size, age, shade, education, and wealth, contrary to the post-slavery era when the choice was life or death. Presently, we live in an era of social desegregation, where the implementation of an alternative social and economic view was provided through legislation. These laws are now used to maintain white-dominated society by maintaining control over the modern slaves who had now become more mobile. Control in relation to Black liberation refers to the ability to influence, guide, or persuade aside from the input of another people's view. Now, the author, John A. Wright Sr., in his documentary, Kinloch, 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 Missouri's first Black city, captured a time in America's history that showed insurmountable economic growth and Black interracial integration with Black progress before we became addicted to the falsely fabricated alternative, which today is called civil rights. This is a social code word that has historically proven to undermine any type of real substantial Black self-empowerment. True self-empowerment has always blossomed from a people's ability to come together first with their own race and family, producing a culture and an exemplary way of civilization, and then share those ideals with the rest of humanity. And see, they took this away from us. We got to get back. So during the segregation era, when the Black churches were collectively organized, devil is a lie. Devil is a lie. I believe the blood of Jesus. Talking about the connectivity ain't working. The connectivity is working. I know as much as I pay for it, it should be working. So during the segregation era, when Black churches were collectively organized for the purpose of developing a school system using the Bible as a liberating tool and as a device of creating our own moral educational standard. This was a very effective method because by using what we were given from the slave master for our own purpose, Black people at that time were able to create an alternative that was very constructive in the arena of developing a system of education that catered specifically to our needs. Since the school system and the Black churches at that time were connected, we were automatically in ownership of entire school districts. If you notice, dwindling black-owned schools immediately after the implementation of government desegregation policies. As a collective, blacks were subtly lured away from personal community development for the sake of some mere so-called social advantagements that were supposed to come along with the package of integration. But only decades later did many black people come to realize that dropping the idea of black unity to become absorbed by the white unified and organized majority was a painful lesson. Thanks to the era of segregation, black people immediately began to make true human progress in the areas of business development, farming, products development, manufacturing, and most importantly, a solid family structure, a type of value system which is the basis of society, family, which is an institution that has been destroyed from the kidnapping of the first African. Even then, the African retained an understanding of the importance of family values and a will to attempt to reorganize during the plantation era. But something changed dramatically for that first generation of Africans after breeding millions of new, fresh, fertile minds for the master. The entire generation of adults were murdered, leaving behind a race of orphans that were now subject to the teaching, norms, and the values of their captors. And for over 3 complete centuries, under the tutelage of illegitimate foster parents, that's white folks over our children, only after the emancipation of physical bondage did black men and women have the opportunity to develop families outside of the influence of their former masters. So to expound on the pressure of segregation as a device of stimulus for black people after slavery in the area of self-help action aside from government programs is the damage done by influential legislation that made it unlawful to incorporate prayer in the schoolroom. So these policies uniquely were implemented during a time where black communities and their churches were gaining massive ground in school ownership. Then came a governmental assisted political undermining curriculum. This is the input that played an important role in putting a stop to that part of black progress. Soon after came the integration of schools, which divided the black community into separate districts. These are the events that finally led to the thinning out and watering down of black communities all over the United States. Now, before the era of integration, black people in America had an overall better spiritual foundation than we did after the desegregation policies that had been approved. What happened? We did not give God up, church, or faith. So how all of a sudden did the reoccurrence of Willie Lynch mentality emerge up out of the minds of black people, causing us to sabotage our own families and communities? Only when we reconnected in the relationship with the people who had kidnapped, mistreated, murdered, divorced, and psychologically raped you did the principles in the Willie Lynch letter become effective in the life of black men and women. Well, black people, today, we are not only in their house, but we realize that it is their house. Even though the Euro-Gentile obtained his house through unfair schemes of actions and falsification of deeds, it's impossible to rule your own life completely in what is defined as another man's house. So time to get into developing real estate, agribusiness, chemistry, and engineering. But make sure that you are taking action after redefining the value of which nation you are building for. Again, whose world are you building? Whew, may the Lord add a blessing to you, the reader, and me, the hearer of this precious and sacred book writing by Brother Alvin Morrow. Alvin Morrow. Isn't this a powerful read? Isn't this a powerful read, family? Powerful, powerful. Finding out what made us blacks like we are in these Americas after we were brought over and how we were treated as slaves. And see what we see going on in America today? The same mentality where you can just shoot a man down in the street, you put your head on the neck, and now they got lynchings going on, y'all. They got lynchings going on across these United States. Call them suicide. Let me tell everybody that's listening. Let me tell everybody that's listening. Black people do not commit suicide. Ain't what we do. Now, if we've been so indoctrinated by the white society, we might, because we copy what they do. So we might. But I think it's highly impossible to even be able to commit to suicide yourself up in the tree. How you gonna get up on the tree with a chain and put it around the tree and hang yourself? But they say there's been 3 or 4 or 5 reportings since George Floyd's death and since the protest. So things change, and then sometimes things never do change. But we pray they change. All right, let me get off of here so I can rest for 45 minutes and come right back at 3 o'clock for the next section of this read. All right? Don't y'all leave me hanging. Y'all come back. Come back, Misty, if you can. And everybody else. All right? God bless. God bless over here. I'll see you then. Shutting down so I can try to rest the vocals. So I can come on back in a minute. God bless you. Thank you, each and everybody who attended on here. Gotta go.